Welcome all to today's panel on diversity. I'm Verena, Event Marketing Manager at AWS, and I'm happy to be the moderator of today's session. So if you look to the right side, you can probably see that we still have a huge problem here in Germany when it comes to the topic of diversity, if you compare it to our side here. So we are happy to talk about diversity in the next 45 minutes and to have a chat and basically exchange our experience here in the panel. With me on stage, I have great panelists. So let me start with introducing them. They are from AWS and also from our customers N26 and SAP. So on the right side, we have Tanuja Randeri, who is the managing director of AWS EMEA. Then we have Naya Orduna. She's a senior manager for solutions architecture at AWS. And on this side, we have our great customer speakers. We have Elena Ordonez del Campo. She's a senior VP and responsible for global strategic partnerships at SAP. And then we also have Chris Hunter. He is the director of talent acquisition and employer branding at N26. So welcome, all of you. I'm more than grateful to have you on stage today. And I already said that we just want to exchange experiences that you've made in your past career. And I'm eager to understand and learn how also your past experiences now influence the decisions that you're making within the business. And you're all leaders within your organization, so you're also experts when it comes to diversity based on your individual backgrounds. So yeah, as I said, I'm eager to learn more, and I would suggest to kick off the conversation and start with the first question, which is actually for Tanuja. So my first question to you would be, like, how did your past experiences actually shape the career path of you?
Oh, that's great, thank you. Can you hear me okay? So I think great. Thank you for joining us. It's nice to see this audience on this side of the room. No, thanks for the question, because it's really great actually to reflect a little bit about how your career started and where you came from. But if I think back, I would say it's probably my father who really got me into tech, right? Because I don't have a coding degree, I don't have an engineering degree, I'm an economist and an MBA, but my father was a tech entrepreneur. And I remember for the very early days growing up in India, normally the girls would do economists or whatever, and the boys would go into STEM, right? I don't think it's only the problem of India, by the way. I think this is the problem of the world. Only 1 in 3 STEM grads today is a woman, actually, a female, which is a shame, and we've got to get that going. But I would follow him around, and he had a tech business, actually in fax machines and microfilm equipment. So a very early day, that's what I did. And then as I watched him in his entrepreneurial side, and he also worked for a bunch of corporates, I said to myself, I want to do that. I want to be a CEO. I want to run a business someday. And so that is where I got started. And I often say to a lot of folks that I mentor that it's good to have a plan. So, I think Alice in Wonderland said, like, if you don't know where you're going, then any road's going to take you there, right? And so I kind of built a plan to say, I'm going to become a CEO of a company someday and a tech company someday. And I want to work backwards from my plan to be able to figure out what else I need to do. And so I then went about garnering a bunch of skills that I needed to become that. And, careers are just not linear. They sort of are like that. So you can't be totally obsessed about the end. You've got to do the things you need to do to build up those skills. And so very, very quickly, I decided to do my master's in the US. It was great, phenomenal learning for me. And that was in the late 80s, so it was a really great time to be in the US, actually. Learned a lot about work ethic and had a chance to really, work with some phenomenal tech firms. I joined McKinsey at a very early age. And that was great training because I spent a lot of time in the consulting world working with the likes of IBM. And at that time, Ginny Rometty, who's the CEO of IBM, was running the services business. And so that was great. And then I very quickly realized when I was at McKinsey that I needed to then go off and do some operational stuff. And so I left McKinsey as an associate principal and joined EMC, the storage company. I became head of strategy there. And then a few years later, I followed one of my sponsors, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, into Europe. and decided I couldn't be in consulting all my life because I had to get an operational job with a P&L. And so I joined Colt, and that's when I started my P&L career, picked up those skills, moved industries as well, which I think is important. Went back into McKinsey for a while to run big transformation programs as a partner, and then AWS called. So I guess in summary, I would just say three things, which is what I've tried to do is blend strategy and operations experience, because I think you need both, actually. Increasingly, it's very important. I've tried to be fairly mobile in my career, both industries as well as geographies, as much as possible. And really, to be honest, I've followed my heart and done the things I really loved. Because the last thing you want to do in your career is do something you don't love. I'm excited about tech and the power of tech in being able to change the world, and that is why I'm at AWS, because I think we can literally together change the world with cloud. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Also super motivating for a young woman like me who just started her career to see like you as a successful leader at AWS, how you made your path in the tech area. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
I have a very similar question actually for Chris. As I already mentioned, you work at N26. But I'm also interested in learning how your path to N26 was. Like, what were your past experiences that you've made? And were there any challenges that you were facing on your path?
Yes, thank you. First of all, what an absolute pleasure to share the panel with you. As we're talking about diversity, what I really want to do is to frame my journey, but focusing on those key points. And when I was younger, entering the industry, there were three key things from a diversity perspective that really impacted and shaped my career. The first, I'm black. The second, I'm gay. And the third, I was poor. Those three things combined in the tech industry now, but more so back then, were very challenging to overcome, but all in slightly different ways. And if I just take a minute, just want to kind of explain how each were impactful. The first, being black, you cannot not notice it, right? So whenever I walked into a room, I was more often than not the only person of color in every room that I entered. And that had two impacts. First of all, the way that people actually spoke and treated me. And secondly, the consciousness that I was then having to feel to be in this room. You had to, and you've probably heard this, my mother said to me, you will always have to not just do as well as, you will have to do better, because that's the only way you're going to be able to try and get onto a level footing. So every room I went into, I felt that I had to not just be good, but I had to be excellent. I had to outperform just to earn my right in that room. And when you're starting your career, it's very difficult when every conversation you have, you're trying to justify why you're there in the first place. Because you're trying to do your job, you're trying to excel in the thing you're there to do, but in the back of your mind, you're always thinking, have I done enough? Have I earned the right to be in this room? And you know that others, whether it's intentional or not, they are looking at me as the only black guy in the room and are making their own presumptions. So it was very common when I first started my career to be told, you don't sound like a black guy. I was told that in meetings. I was told I didn't speak the way people expected to. And at the time, it was kind of, I was the one that was supposed to kind of take that in good spirits, be pleased with that as a compliment. And I think we have come on a long way since then. I don't think that would be acceptable now. But those were kind of some of the initial challenges from a race perspective. From being a gay man, tech is still very male-dominated, as we know. And the type of male, the kind of alpha male image, which kind of tech entrepreneurs and founders wanted to perpetuate, were very much kind of rife and prevalent, even more so then. So every time you went into a room, there was automatic assumption, and I'd be asked about my wife or my girlfriend. And I was always then caught in this really awkward position. Do I just play along, hoping that I don't have to constantly effectively out myself? Or do I kind of just commit to, this is who I am? And to be honest, at the beginning of my career, that question, some meetings went one way, some meetings went another way. I now look back and I'm sad, but I understand why I did, but it saddens me that I felt like I had to in those environments because of the fact that I didn't want to be seen or my sexuality to be used as a weakness or something to actually hold against me. And the third was, like I say, coming from a poor background. So I come from a single-parent family in South London. Growing up, there wasn't much money. I mean, we didn't even have a computer until we actually kind of got a grant from the government to be able to afford one. So having gone from that environment to suddenly sit in a room with business owners, tech founders, entrepreneurs, and helping to explain to them how they need to structure their people teams, the things that they need to focus on, and the things that really matter. It was tough because they would never really give me the opportunity to, again, this kind of goes back to double proving. I'd have to kind of not only prove it, suggest it, I'd have to then kind of enforce it more so than anybody else because of the fact that I didn't come from the same schools that they went to. I didn't have the same exposure and experiences. So those were the challenges that throughout my career have kind of led and shaped a number of those kind of key things that kind of led me actually into talent acquisition, led me into wanting to try and make the workforce a fairer, more diverse, more equitable place for everybody, irrespective of start, irrespective of who you are, but simply based on how well you're willing to work.
Thanks a lot, Chris, for sharing that. And we will also talk about your work at N26 later, more on. But yeah, I think it's a very emotional story and basically shows the progress that is still needed in the work environment to make sure everyone feels comfortable and equally valued there as well. Now that we've heard two more personal stories, I'd like to ask you the next question, Naya, which is a little bit more general. And the question is basically, why do you think that diversity is generally important in tech, and especially for today's topic, which is business excellence?
Thank you, Verena. So my name is Naya. I want to start with a question. Please raise your hand, those that know Naya apart from me now. So I don't see any hand. Well, those are cheating here.
This is your fan club.
So I usually start my conversation saying, Naya, don't pronounce the H, because my name is in Basque language. Basque country, where I come from, is a small region in the north of Spain, and this is like my second language. So I always bring as a start my immigrant background. I am an engineer. I am a mother of two. And I am a technical leader at AWS. And there are not so many technical people with my background. And that's why I think it's a pity, because as you said, I think tech is very exciting. And I believe the diversity is better, and that's why I spend a lot of my professional and personal time bringing people with diverse background into the technology. And usually I get this question, like, but why? Why is diversity important for business excellence? And I'm going to start with two reasons I am not going to use to justify diversity. I am not going to bring here the reason about diversity is the right thing to do, because I don't want to go into the discussions about values. I have met people that do not share my values, and it's fine. I don't bring that discussion point now. I'm also not going to say, look, diversity is the best for every team, because honestly, if I now need a team of 4 people to move all those chairs to the next building, I need those who are like the fittest and strongest. I'm not going to start saying like, I need like different gender, age, or so. So I park those reasons, and now I'm going to bring in the 2 reasons why I always justify diversity. So the first reason is about having different perspectives. Many times, I prove this in a room full of people, and I have like my own experiment, which I do is I bring an egg box, one of these boxes in the supermarket with the eggs, and I ask the people in the room, be creative. What would you do with this box? And usually then the parent of the room says, I know how to build a crocodile toy with this box. Then the sport person comes and says, I could put my golf balls there. Then there is always somebody talking about a soundproofing system, or jewelry, or like plants, flowers. There's always one person that says, I will just put eggs. So when we have this discussion, then when the magic happens. And the magic is that then we get to the conclusion that we could do a case to put golf balls with the shape of a crocodile, because we get two ideas that we will not get our individuals on their own. So when we have cognitive diverse teams with different gender, age, background, then we can get to ideas that we wouldn't get. So if we are in a business where we need we aim for business excellence and we have to solve complex problems, we need these different perspectives. And the second reason is about the biases. So we all have biases. I'm happy I have my biases because this way I don't take so long for every little decision I make. But what happens is that sometimes I'm not aware of my biases. And we want to build solutions and products for the whole world. And we don't want to have biases, products or solutions. We have always heard in the news that some product was, for example, giving like a credit card, giving more credit to a man, to a woman. We don't want to go in that. And the way to ensure that we want to build our products for everybody, the best way to be aware of our biases is when we are working in a diverse team. So now the question, can you please raise your hand? Those of you that are working in teams that have to solve complex problems. Those of you that are building for the world, like services. Those of you that have like complex issues to challenge, complex challenges. Then I think, okay, now I see a lot of hands. Now I want to tell you that you all need diversity in your teams.
Can I just pick up on something you said? I don't know if you can hear me, but I love those examples because I think it's exactly right. I want to state maybe a very significant challenge we face in Europe and why diversity is important. But right now, Europe needs 20 million ICT specialists to really actually deliver against its digital decade ambition. And that digital decade ambition relies on having 75% of companies using cloud and 90% of small, medium businesses with some digital proficiency, right? And the biggest issue, we all know, is a lack of skills. So the only way we're going to hire enough people and have enough people in all those jobs that are going to be created by cloud computing and digital transformation to then drive productivity and growth and R&D investment in Europe to the tune of $2.8 trillion is if we get out there and unleash every single person in terms of talent. And that means more women, more people of color, more people from the LGBTQIA area, more females who are underfunded, underserved in the community of startups. We need everybody we need because there's 97 million jobs that are going to be created by 2025. And there's no way to fill them. So unless you're looking out for those women out there, for sure, you're not going to be able to do the business transformation or solve any of those complex challenges that you talked about. So I just wanted to bring that up because it's super powerful that we have to go address together.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, Tanuja. And thanks, Naya. I really like the egg box example.
Next
really,
time I bring it.
Yeah, it really shows why it matters to have many diverse ideas because our customers are diverse as well. So
Correct.
we really have to make sure that we build a product that makes sense for our customers. So Elena, nice to have you here as well.
Thank you for the
I would
invitation.
also like to ask you a more personal question. You came as a young Spanish woman to Germany to work for SAP. Please tell us your story, how that went for you. And I'm also interested in hearing how your background has also brought value to your business that you're doing right now.
Okay, thanks, Marina, for the question. Thanks for the invitation. Pleasure to be here. But before I go into my personal life, I think Chris' story was very courageous to share that with the audience. And I think part of the discussion that we have here is that diversity and inclusion, I always talk about both things because I think that there is another step in the way to diversity and inclusion, is that privileges are invisible for those who have it. And that creates a lot of biases in every way we work together. That's a little bit a challenge. And that's probably a little bit a challenge why, and there are a lot of differences between the countries, even within Europe. Why in Spain you would find more females that are going into a STEM career versus in Germany, which is, you could start crying and don't stop. So that's a little bit the situation we're facing. So getting back to my professional career, and I would like to put this a little bit into perspective, because that was in the 80s. I was a young professional, have studied computer science at the point of time where we didn't even know what that was. I was hired by a company called ACP in Germany. That's much different than the company that you all know today. So I was hired for the founders. My personal number was 561. ACP was 800 employees worldwide. And it was all German, okay? So the couple of people that were non-German working involved, they would be the translation department. And that was always the first question that I was asked, non-German, oh, you are a translator. And I was, no, listen, guys, I don't wear Birkenstock shoes for the Germans, you probably know that, but I'm a developer, I'm coding the same like you. And I did that for a very, very long time. And there was a mentor, I would call it mentor, a boss that I had, a manager in my life that somehow he saw something different, saw potential in me, and he kept on giving me more and more responsibility every 6 months. I was like, listen, but I have just started the other job. And he was like, Lena, trust me, you will be fine. And that's something that really helps your career. I am a person that always wants to make an impact. For me, it's not that much about having, I don't know how many thousand people. It's having an impact, changing in perspective, doing something which is good for the business, for the customers, and maybe for the world. And that was a little bit what I did. I kept on changing roles. I funded at a certain point of time, 2003, a department within ACP called Globalization Services. So my team was the most international and global team that you could face. We were in charge of developing all ACP solutions at that point of time in 37 languages, and adapting all the solutions to legal requirements, best business practices. It was always very emotional when we had a soccer worldwide championship, because you could see the German fighting against the Dutch people. It was, where there were no friends any longer. And there was a point of time where I decided, okay, I need to take the next level. I wanted to have P&L responsibility, a little bit like you did, Tanuja, and I changed the perspective. So I decided to look for opportunities outside ACP for me, and I managed ACP services, the ACP business of one of our GSSPs globally, Deutsche Telekom, for 9 years. And then I again decided to change perspectives and get all that experience that I had as a partner and bring it back home to ACP. Is a little bit how it feels. I never left the topic, and and that's where I'm trying to make an impact and a change, because I believe we need partners and collaboration, for the best of our customers more than ever. If I would have, a reflection or recommendation that what has helped me in my career, the first thing I would say is be the best version of yourself every day. I never questioned. I knew I was different because I was not German. I had studied computer science, but I always thought, I'll give my very best, and if that's not good enough, then okay, that's fine. But I wouldn't question, what was my gender, what was my background. And that's something that I recommend everybody. I think our customers deserve that. The teams you lead deserve it. The teams you work with deserve it. So that would be my first recommendation. The second one is I never had a plan, Tanuja. Never, ever. Actually, I always wanted to become a doctor, and it was my dad that told me, why don't you take a look at this thing called computer science?
This is diversity. We're not the same. Yeah.
And my recommendation is sometimes it's not about your plan. It's about keeping your eyes wide open for opportunities and jump on them. Take them as an opportunity to learn, to grow individually. You don't learn from the successes. You learn from the failures. And that's something that everybody needs to keep in mind. And then the third one is stay curious. Take a look at everything which is around us. We are living in such an amazing world, which is technology. I mean, if you see how much Gen AI, ChatGPT has changed the world in the last, I don't know, since November last year, it took like 2 months to get 100 million users.
Yes, amazing.
Yeah. If you would have been the, the inventor of the phone, it would have taken you 75 years to get 100 users. So that's the way, the world we live in. And be curious. I am big fan of lifelong learning. It's an amazing world where we live in. And maybe one other recommendation, on a personal perspective, I'm the proudest man of a 22-year-old son. I'm a single mother. He is a person that will never question whether a woman should have a career. A woman can do anything. I'm also happily married. And I always use 2 hashtags to describe myself, and I'm very proud of that. I'm a woman in technology, and I'm a citizen of the world, and that's what I believe is the future of our society and humankind.
Bravo.
Wow, fantastic story. Thank you so much for sharing that, and also for the tips. Those were really helpful for me, and I also hope for our audience to keep that in mind in order to be successful.
By the way, we are very alike in some ways. I have a 22-year-old too, and studying astrophysics at Cambridge. Phenomenal. I mean, super proud. And interestingly, my husband has always been the stay-home dad.
Yep.
So I was super lucky from a very early day to have the balance through the two of us. But we are both role models for him. Because his father stayed home and is phenomenal and taught him everything he knew about computer science, actually. And his mom was working all of the time and then available on the weekends for him. And I think he follows both of us. And it's so amazing, right?
Yeah.
It can be done. Even with 2 working parents, it can absolutely be done, by the way.
Yeah.
So.
And that would be also a recommendation. I mean, sometimes when I kind of share the story of my life, especially women, young women, they ask about questions, do I need to make a choice? Do what is the right thing for you.
Yeah.
It might not be the easy way, but do what you believe is right.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your personal experiences and tips. I would like to move on to a second round of questions, which is now more focused on what you're doing within your organizations to, improve diversity and programs around diversity. So I would like to start with you, Tanuja, once again. Can you tell us more about AWS' approach on diversity? There are different programs, like internal ones and external ones, that basically improve diversity. So can you share them with us?
Yeah, no, thanks. And maybe, again, contextually, I think it's important to figure out where we need to address the problem. But if I reflect on where we find, and if I take gender diversity for a moment, because it's diversity and inclusion in all forms, as we discussed, but if I look at gender diversity in particular, and I say this because technical roles in particular, we just don't have enough women, right, actually. So if you look broadly speaking, the entry level globally, you have almost 48% female, actually, broadly across companies. And this is data, by the way, from McKinsey. By the time you get to the C-suite, we all know this, you actually only have 23%. So that's a massive leaky pipeline or bucket. And by the way, typically the issue happens at that first, what they call rung, when a woman takes on her first management role. So it's called the broken rung syndrome, right? And that's the thing we have to go fix. But we have made progress because in 2017, that was 6 points less, right? So it's good, but it's a glacial progress to what Elena's saying as well. If you look at the technical side, the issue is even worse, actually. And in fact, what we've seen in terms of women in technical roles is it's declined from 2017, it was 18% to 16%. So we still have a real problem getting people excited about tech, and we actually, this panel here, we need to demystify tech because tech does not equal all jobs are coding. Mm-hmm. You could be in the legal profession in tech, you could be in the PR profession in tech, You could be a tech leader. I mean, you could be any of those things. You could be running globalization initiatives, I mean, et cetera. And we just haven't done a good enough job, if you ask me, of getting out there and actually encouraging people to understand that tech is so many things, right? Sustainability today, diversity today, skills, all of the above. And if I look at those two challenges, then how are we thinking about it? There's four things that I really truly believe in myself and what we're committing to. The first is we've got to inspire the next generation of talent. So unless we get to those 12 and 15-year-olds and even earlier, I mean, like my dad did for me, and I'm sure all of you had influences in your life, but we've got a great program called Get IT, where we work with young girls, particularly in the ages of 12 to 15, to get them into these sort of app development competitions. And we've got 23,000 students, by the way, now that have gone through this program. Phenomenal. I mean, you'd be amazed at what they come up with. And they're all ESG-related applications. That's what I find just incredible. So that's one, inspiring the next generation of talent. The second big one is we need to reskill, retrain, and discover the hidden talent. There are a lot of people out there who are underemployed, underserved communities, and we need to bring them into tech, because tech is going to give them amazing opportunities, by the way, right? And in fact, post-pandemic, 85% of workers that we interviewed during our digital skills studies actually said that they needed digital skills to be employable, right? So how do we bring people back into tech? We have a program called Restart. And Restart, by the way, is, again, a free program, 12 weeks of classroom training. And at the end of that, you can get your first job in tech. We actually link our graduates to people who would have jobs. I mean, SAP as a partner, as an example, but there are many others. And 90% of our graduates, by the way, get interviewed, which is incredible. So Restart's a phenomenal program, by the way. Anyone can apply for it. And we are all going to live very long lives, I think, because of technology. So, you have to constantly be learn and be curious, as we say, which is one of our leadership principles. I think the third big thing that we need to focus on is you get people into tech, you bring them in, you've got to then keep them. You've got to develop them. And so flexible working is really important. And as we all return to the office, we need to continue to maintain that flexible working. The other big one is pay equity. I mean, the fact is, we need to absolutely push on pay equity. I'm very proud that at Amazon, we have a 99.8 cents. Women are paid 99.8 cents per dollar for the same job that a man is in the same role, right? So I'm excited. It's not 100, but we've made a lot of progress, and I think pay equity is key. Sponsorship is key. And mentoring, to your point, right? I think we've all been encouraged by in our careers because of sponsors and mentors. I think women get over-mentored and under-sponsored. So sponsorship is really key, and that's about opening doors and role modeling, and making sure managers are actually delivering against the policies that companies have, right? And then finally, I always say, just do it. In a way, right? Let's go out there and hire people not for the CV, but for the capabilities that they bring to the table, right? So there's a lot going on. I will just finally make a pitch for our affinity groups, which I think have a great thing. We have Glamazon at Amazon, we have women at Amazon, and we have a Black community that's very live. We have an LGBTQ community that's extremely live, and it's just phenomenal to see the diversity in our business. Our leadership principle, which is leaders are right a lot, is really back to diversity, because it's about leaders surrounding themselves with diverse thoughts so that you're not actually just following your own gut all the time, but listening and taking in all of those influences. So I'll pause, but those are some of the things that we've been up to.
So many interesting points. Thank you so much. And we also have Naya here, who is an AWS employee. So can you also elaborate from your perspective? How do you see the commitment that Tanuja just mentioned in action, actually?
Yeah, well, actually, I was like, just before the pandemic, I organized events after work as part of the Women in Big Data organization. And AWS reached us out, like, we are sponsors, come here. I was in the Munich office, I was not working for AWS, and I got to meet the people, solutions architects. I really saw the diversity of the commitment of AWS on diversity. And that day I went home and I thought, I would like to work here. So these external events work to attract people. Then when I joined in the middle of the pandemic, like homeschooling, like at home, and I couldn't meet the people. And I joined one of the affinity groups, the Women at. I joined the diversity group in Germany, and then it was fantastic because it let me also get to know other people I couldn't get to know from my job. And eventually I volunteered, I got more engaged, I got to learn the Amazon culture from different sides, and I got also like mentors, mentees, or both at the same time, mentor and mentee relationship. So that helped me to shape my career. And then finally, right now, so I have a technical role, very customer focused and oriented, and our conversations are really beyond tech. So we help customers also to transform in culture and transformation, people and culture. We have great conversations, and for example, I work with SAP. We have a partnership now through our diversity affinity groups networks. We exchange insights, and I'm looking forward to see the next steps, like in this partnership. We are even focusing on sustainability and in diversity. So from everywhere.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now I'm of course also interested like what our customers are doing in the area of diversity, and I would like to start with you, Elena. So yeah, how is SAP driving diversity, and which value do you also see in industry partnerships specifically?
So listen, I think diversity and inclusion is something which is very important for us. We have a yearly report, which is, we put all the KPIs. I think sometimes numbers speak for themselves. You have mentioned a couple of them. We have around 110,000 employees, 157 nationalities within the team. I think last year we won 42 awards on diversity and inclusion. And I think we've gone a long, long way. We founded, I think, the first team or the first group of people community very focused on LGBT. It was in 2003, the ACP Business Women Network that I was co-funding. It was 2007. And we have things like gender-neutral restrooms. This is something which, might be very obvious, but something that you need to focus because this is not something that you would do very obviously. So I think also in terms of STEM, we have 35 people, 35% of women in the workforce, 30% of the managers are women. Long, long way. We're better than the average, but we are not there yet. Okay, and I think also from an economical perspective, from a growth perspective, as Tanuja was mentioning, I think one of the biggest limiting growth factors that we have nowadays, not only in the industry, because I think without technology nothing works nowadays, in general, is talent. And therefore we need everybody. It doesn't matter we were talking about gender, culture, religious background, sexual orientation. We need everybody on board. Maybe even people that have another professional background and would like to open up the doors, for technology. We work very close with universities. We have a University Alliances program. We work with UNICEF. We have what we call Gen U, Generation Unlimited program, where we give young people in marginalized societies and countries technology background and skills. So we do a lot of things. I think it's all required, probably not enough, because there's still a lot of work to be done. And yes, we work with a lot of our partners, like Naya was mentioning, trying to exchange ideas. We had 2 weeks ago, Congress in Paris, where we had people from ACP, but also customers, partners, exchanging ideas, how we can together move the needle. And I would like to get back to this together move the needle, because there are a lot of things that nowadays cannot be in the endeavor of one single company or maybe even one single industry. The topic inequality is one of the key dimensions for ACP when we talk about sustainability. Sustainability for us is zero emissions, zero waste, zero inequality. And by that, we try to cover everything. This is a very important dimension because I don't think that we can move the needle on sustainability alone as a company or as an industry. We have maybe the privilege to have a lot of companies that have different roles at the same time when they interact with ACP. They are customers, they are partners, they might be suppliers between all of them, which is what we call business networks. And I think that's what we need to work on together on all these topics to really make a difference, also for young generations. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about diversity, inclusion, giving them a better choice in life, or just, taking care about our planet.
Can I just say one thing? I love that you brought up sustainability because actually they are on separate points, what we're trying to do here. The one thing where technology can make a huge difference is data and inspection, right? Because if you don't have data about attrition levels, about how many women you have, how many black people you have, how many gay people you have, whatever, you don't know what you just can't address them. So one of the things we did with ADP, another 3-letter company. But one of the things we did with ADP actually is we helped them with all their data. They have created a diversity and equity dashboard that allows companies to compare their own KPIs with others. And then we released a pay equity tool with them, by the way. And we launched this, I think, in the summer of 2021. I think we had 1,000 companies to get onto the tool, I think, in the December after. And what we saw is pay equity actually went up in 2/3 of those companies. So this concept of data influencing what you can act on and then driving insights on and taking decisions is super important to sustainability. And then that leads back into what you can do with the diversity.
Yeah. And I think you need to go beyond the borders of your own company because you might make the right ethical decisions, what you believe are the right things, but you don't know what your suppliers are doing. Exactly. Where does this end? And that's the reason why I think you need to go broader, work with them in terms of partnerships, so for a better future for all of us at the end of the day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, and I can't wait what you will achieve in the future with all of these programs that you just mentioned. And Chris, for N26, like earlier in the session, you were talking about the challenges that you were facing in your past. So how do you address those challenges now in your leading position at N26, and how does it impact your people?
So first of all, there are a couple of things that have come up that I just wanted to kind of get into. So I will answer that question directly, but I just want to flag this idea of demystifying, I think is super important. And if I kind of do reflect back on my life, when in the UK, at the age of 16, everybody has these national tests. I got one of the highest marks in the country for maths. But because of the school that I went to, nobody talked to me about going into finance. Nobody talked to me about tech. It was just not even a consideration. Not because of the skill, but because of the fact that that was the socio-demographic background. And I think that we have an obligation to make sure that we're not just opening the doors and saying to people, come, because that message isn't reaching people. We have to actively make sure that we're not just saying, come, we're here. What are we proactively doing? And I guess if I could ask everybody to take away one thing, it would be to think about that. How can you help actually bring the technology industry to more people rather than just kind of opening it up? I know we're short on time, so I'm just going to also talk about the fact that rather than some of the key topics that we have, there was a moment when I realized that we were doing great things. We have a great kind of Women in Tech conference. Actually, we partnered with AWS on one in Barcelona last week. And we were doing all of these tactical things which were trying to raise awareness. And having a conversation with somebody internally, and they said, well, surely if the woman's the best person for the job, we just hire a woman, right? Like, that just makes sense. And having been he was a rich white guy, he never realized that actually there was a problem. So when we sat down and I explained to him, yes, that should be the case, but if we look at the pipelines, the talent pools, people aren't getting those opportunities to fill those jobs. He was like, I guess that's something we should work on. The penny suddenly clicked. And that's why our key focus for this year and the plans that we've now done are all around actually educating, helping people to understand why there is a need, what that means and what the impacts are. Because what we were doing was address kind of all these key things and did all these wonderful conferences and events. But it was going over people's heads because they never felt that they never understood. So that's what our key focus is: drive the understanding, drive the why, and then all of these things will really be able to make an impact.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm also looking at the time, and we're at time. So thank you all so much for sharing your experiences, your programs. It was super insightful for me, and I also hope for you, like the audience. If you still have questions around the topic of diversity, inclusion, equity, we also have a booth in the AWS World that you can visit. You can meet the team there and chat with us. And I would also like to kindly ask you to please complete the survey session for today, so we can also read your feedback that you have. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the summit.
Thank you. Well done. Thank you.